Well, in a way, for me personally, I think there's one film landscape, everywhere. That's my firm belief because when you think about the history of Hollywood, it was made by European emigres, and the way we are telling stories, it's just kind of this is the landscape of imaginaire. So I would never say like kind of this is a typically European film, this is a typically American film. Of course, for example, for us, perception of American films in Europe, unfortunately, it comes mainly through the studios. We don't see a lot. That's a really pity. We don't see a lot of American independent production, which I think that in a way it's much closer to what the Europeans are doing in Europe. And I think it's always like in a way that we are giving to each other. So I would never, go with the theory that there's a European way of making films. There's American way of making film. But maybe there's a way of European film, how European film business goes around and American film business goes around. But I think we are so interconnected that I would rather insist on what binds us together rather than what separates us together. And I think that the most successful things are now when we are not thinking, how to make something accessible to somebody, but be true to ourselves and stories that we want to tell, which are dealing with, those the issues that we are all sharing. Because when you look, there are so many similarities in between us and the situations, and we live in that interconnected world. We share the same heritage in a way. So I think that insisting on differences or like how I'm going to make it accessible to the others, it's in my opinion at least, it's not the right way to go, or insisting on like really difference. Just be true to our aesthetics, and it will cross over. I'm a firm believer that if something is good, that it will cross over and appeal to everybody.
So if you're looking, like you're saying, you feel that there is a certain connection between independent on both sides.
Yes, 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 yeah.
Does it have to do with maybe there, it's more difficult to do an independent film?
Yeah, to do in independent film, even in Europe, when you have this very generous, I would call it, because I come from the public funding side, maybe producers would disagree, but in a way, sometimes, I've heard this a couple of days ago from my fellow European filmmakers that, like, actually, we don't have so many problems in Europe. We are, in a way, lucky because we have so many doors we can knock on in terms of public funding, supranational funds. And there is also one thing that is very important for Europe and public funds. We invest a lot of in development. There's public money for development, there's supranational European public money, which is media program for development. We are producing quite a lot of films. I really, sometimes ask myself, how do independent filmmakers do it in this country? If you really have to put all the money, the distribution deals are going down, how do you finance it if you have to finance it from private sources? And I think that a lot of European filmmakers, if they were, and maybe it would be good, kind of to send some here, some there, to experience a bit, kind of, probably they would stop complaining, or maybe come with, the final solution for everything.
Good luck on that one. Because that's I think that is really the, um, the misconception of what's happening on how films get. Again, going back to the fact of financing, which is really the important part. You have folks here, they're on their coffee table writing away while they're working as a waiter, or they're working as a teacher. And from what I've seen with films from Europe specifically, they, like you said, they have time to sit down and how do we do this? And I think that maybe, that allows for the films that are being made in Europe to have more introspection. Where here you still have to look at the studios and you got to do a lot of the action and all that. And that would be an interesting question for you, which is that what do you think would happen if you had some of these filmmakers here that are just used to just in a way fighting it out to make their film, all of a sudden have access to some of the opportunities that you filmmakers have?
I think that it would give them kind of time to take it a bit slowly. Although I say to you like although there is money there in Europe, but it's never like the whole of the money that you need. So closing the deal, closing the financial deal, it can be like in a really long process too. But at least they have a head start in terms of that. There are some periods when they can relax and invest more into it. Maybe sometimes it's kind of they're not so much in tune what the audience expects. It's you always, for example, we my Croatian Audiovisual Center that I work for, we try when we greenlight the films for production. We always try to do this slate of the films that we know that might have the appeal at the international festival circuit, but also the films that we feel it will have appeal in for the audience in the cinemas. Because there's something which I would call, I don't know whether, but it's true. Maybe it's true for also for American independence. Like in Europe, everybody's chasing in a way. It's which I call the holy grail of European cinema, and that is to make a film that will be in Cannes but will break the box office record. And I know only one man who used to do it, and his name is Pedro Almodovar. Like the rest is like this was there. So it's a bit of a schizophrenic situation. Like you want to have this integrity, you want to make a difficult film, but also you would like to see people. I'm not saying that you should completely separate, but for example, the Danish are running, the public fund is running two separate schemes. One is called a consultant scheme, and all the Danish film that are were financed through that consultant scheme, which means that artistic consultant has chosen that project, and the Danish Film Institute supported it. Whilst they have this what they call commercial scheme, which is geared, they have a say into it. It's geared towards commercial films, and those are the films that make quite a lot of money at the Danish box office. And those are the films, most of them you've never heard of, because they don't go to the festivals, they're not international enough. From time to time you have crossovers, like the films from this scheme making quite a lot of money. So, we try to, I think that more and more public funding in Europe, it's not so auteur driven. We're acknowledging that that's a big tradition, but we're also looking towards the audience, and I think that's the way forward.
Now, here's a last question for you. It seems like Europe understands the value of supporting media in all aspects. Here, there is some support, but it really becomes another type of business, just focused business, which really focus on the money bottom line in some cases. I've been trying to put my head around that. Is that forever?
I think that first you have in Europe we in a way have a different problem. The problem is that all the governments look at the film as a cultural product. Whilst sometimes you can argue it's got this dual nature, which is that at the same time it is a culture, artistic, but it's also like the industry. And even the European Commission acknowledges that. That's why we have concurrent schemes, like selective, for artistic films, then simply automatic schemes which are tax rebates, and or you can combine both. So I think that kind of maybe stems from this kind of a historical difference, and also there's this underlying thing in America, like everybody can make it.
Somehow.
You only have to try. Whilst I think in Europe, it's been acknowledged that kind of because you are contributing to the state, and state should give something back to you, like not like for the bigger government.
Exactly.
But it's not that. It's just that if we are community, then and that is something that. I mean, you can hear dissenting voices, but I think that Europe most, and the politicians in Europe, although sometimes they're trying to do stupid things, that they acknowledge this dual thing, that it is a business that employs quite a lot of people, generates quite a lot of money in indirect things, in taxes and everything, but it is, and it is. It can also be said that it is because the film in because Europe has many languages, many nations, so it was, the most important the media through which is, you are kind of keeping, or you are taking, looking after your national identity, which is not a bad thing. So that there's, in America is a melting pot. So there are like, which I like, but there are some downsides to it, and the greed is good. like,
Yeah, we've learned that that doesn't work.
yeah. I don't think that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher saved the world.
Exactly.
Quite on the contrary, because we are we witness, what is happening now. So I think that's kind of it's historical. Is that hopefully I would like to see things kind of change. I'm not saying that we are right, but we acknowledge that duality. So sometimes we have more problems of convincing our governments to give us some business incentives for film, because they kind of just see it in the cultural ghetto, and we are trying to explain that it's the mixture of both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.